I'm not for Ozempic or any of the GL1 P inhibitors and all. And the reason being is the following. Number one is after you start seeing patients who've been on them, who've had the side effects, it's more that when you actually start looking at the science of it. Recently, there was a study that just came out, like, I don't know if you saw it 2 weeks ago, the Journal of Clinical Pharmacology, which they put a warning out. Right now, the warning was that in male patients, because we do know that there's an increased risk of suicide, right? And that's been kind of dumbed down by the press because it's a big seller, right? This is everybody's cash cow. If you buy stock right now, you can retire really early because it's a big boom right now. Every company, they're even shutting down. There was actually about a dozen clinical trials in stage 3, stage 4, almost to the market, shutting down and just going for the weight loss drugs because it's that much of, $100 billion or more, value. And I think when I was doing a weight loss summit just about 2 years ago, and it was 10 billion market share. Now it's like 100 billion market share, right? So everybody's pushing it. All the companies, like, that's our number one thing. We're not going to cure cancer. We're not going to cure diabetes or childhood diseases. They're going to just push the weight loss, right? Because $1,200 per person or more, and now they're trying to get even Medicare to cover it for seniors, right? Which will bankrupt the Medicare system. But what we're not looking at is that in men, in the suicide risk, they actually had completion the highest. So that means men who have suicidal thoughts taking this drug, don't just, because the antidepressants, a lot of medications that we give, unfortunately, not me, but the system gives, have high risk of suicidal thoughts. That's common, right? But the interesting thing is it made them lead to completion. That means men actually committed suicide on this drug, higher than normal and higher than when, like these people who didn't come in with that. Now, the drug company's like, well, we'll just push all of this risk on the healthcare provider to provide mental health. But everybody knows we have terrible mental health. We don't have any mental health in America right now. It's hard to get even to have a therapist, or VA patients killing themselves in parking lots right now because they can't even get mental health, right? So we have to look at one other thing is that when they did this, another study came out looking at the receptors, because everybody thinks they understand how this drug works. They don't, because in the models, now these are animal models, right? Because we don't have human models right now. There's human models that the studies they will lose weight. So yes, we do know weight loss will occur. Just like Julieanna says, like anything can make people lose weight. I mean, I can sell someone, duct tape and they can put it over their mouth to lose weight, right? So like there's ways that people can lose weight. They may not be healthy, but they can lose weight. But what they did is they were looking at the receptors in the animals. This is what they're basing the studies on. And this came out recently, about a month ago. But when they stimulate the receptor that they're trying to, these inhibitors, is there's weight loss. And then when they block it, there's weight loss. So they're having the same response with turning it off and on, but it shouldn't be that way. So what that tells us that that's not really the mechanism of action of how it's truly working. Okay. Now, what we're seeing is the microbiome is becoming dysfunctional because, yes, it's a behavioral problem, but we know there's more neurotransmitters in your gut than your brain. That's why these people are having suicidal thoughts, right? But it's not just the suicidal thoughts, it's that you can't suppress the microbiome. You have to change the microbiome. The changing the microbiome, that's why when people do eat better and they start getting better nutrition, that changes the microbiome, that changes the neurological functioning of the patient, which helps them decrease with these behaviors. The problem is once we start eating these pro-inflammatory foods that are actually shifting, and we can actually now test. I mean, I was actually on a call last week with an immunologist in a lab company, and they were looking at certain things that people take, certain drugs. This is what I mean, because this is the large percent of the population is going to take this drug because everybody wants immediate weight loss. I understand that. I can't argue against that because who doesn't want to lose a couple of pounds? Or a lot of people have a lot of more pounds to lose, right? Because that's been the whole push of the standard American diet. But we have to look at the long-term ramifications, right? This is just like this is the early. Everybody's getting on, and then you're already starting to see there's already starting to have class action lawsuits because there's so many people taking it. Now there's going to be a subsection of for patients who take this that it's going to be a game changer, right? Somebody's like very overweight, very diabetic, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, they can lose the weight, they can lose it, but that's just a temporary fix. They haven't changed their behavior, like she said, Julieanna mentioned, and all the studies show that they just gain the weight back because everybody's like, I'm starving myself, but that's changing their microbiome. But the interesting thing is some of the studies now, and with the patients that are having side effects, is that once they stop the drug, it's not just the side effects of like, oh, my gastroparesis, because people have died now from gastroparesis. You're stopping the gut from moving. When you stop the gut from moving, you actually get a decrease of serotonin. You actually get more depression symptoms. That leads to have these suicidal thoughts. But people have died from just the gut not moving. You can start looking at these cases where people actually end up just so blacked up they die from the gut not moving at all. I mean, it's quite disgusting and painful. Okay, but we have to be careful because everybody, there's people, celebrities that are pushing it. Everybody's buying stock in these things, but we have to look at it as a society. Is like, is it even sustainable, right? Because yeah, if you have insurance or you can pay $1,200 a month, that's one thing, but the average person can't, right? So there's like it's a disadvantage because a lot of people are now putting this on credit cards or they're going to clinics and they're paying for it, but that's not sustainable unless you're in Hollywood or you make a lot of money, right? So there's a disconnect because then those people who have side effects, they may not have the healthcare to take care of those secondary problems, right? And that's what we're starting to see. So I was, 2 years ago, I started saying like this is not a good thing. I understand the reasoning why America has a weight problem. We do have an epidemic of obesity and blood sugar problems, and we do know that once we lower the weight, we do lower cardiac risk, blood sugar risk, blood pressure risk, inflammatory risk. That's a temporary fix because it's not solving the problems. These people are still eating a pro-inflammatory diet. They're still becoming deficient in nutrition. So when I see a patient now that comes in and they've lost weight, so physically they look good on Instagram, but when you test them nutritionally, you test their microbiome, it's completely dysfunctional, it's completely deficient, and they're actually in a more pro-inflammatory state. So we have to be careful of this outer appearance because that's just short-lived. And that's my warning to everybody. Now, again, for some people, it might be beneficial, but it's not a long-term solution. And I think it's going to be a bigger problem in the future.
Have you seen patients come in that have gone off of Ozempic or that are on Ozempic?
Most of the patients that I've seen that have been on Ozempic have had side effects that they had to stop the Ozempic, and most of them wanted to take it. So that I didn't prescribe it, but it's like and I'm like, hey, I'm all for it. People have to try because I'm not an anti-drug person, but believe it or not, I'm not anti-pharmaceutical. I'm anti-side effect, right? And so some drugs, we prescribe drugs every day that can help people manage disease. We like to reverse disease, more importantly, but it's like we don't throw it out; we use it. But the idea is that this is a too quick solution, right? Because nobody wants to address the bigger conversation that we're having in this conference, which is diet and the environment, the food, the psychological, sociological, economical stressors that people have. And so again, it's the Botox of the weight loss industry now, and it is what it is, but you'll start to see there's going to be problems, and now we're going to have to develop other drugs that are going to be for the side effects of these weight loss drugs. But yeah, I haven't. I mean, I definitely people have lost weight when they've been on it if they can tolerate it. But most people have, you know, the majority of the people who take it are not taking it correctly because they're taking it for weight loss indirectly, right? Through weight loss clinics or doctors who are just over going to prescribe because they're the doc that does the weight loss drugs, but they don't really fit the true criteria. And even of those people who fit the true criteria, they're still having that dysfunction. They just get a better gain overall quickly of losing the weight. So that immediate risk factors drop. So yes, it's a good thing. But again, the sustainability is not there. Economically, it's not there as well.
So Juliana, obviously one of the main reasons why people need this drug in the first place is because they are addicted to the pleasure of eating, right? They, for various reasons. In the Choose You Now diet, how do you address the balance between nutritional science and the pleasure of eating?
Well, I want everyone to love to eat. I think that's so important. If you don't love your food, it's not going to be sustainable. The whole idea is to find your new foods that are just as convenient, enjoyable, and reliable and familiar as the old foods that you used to love. And it's a matter of, gosh, there's amazing, amazing transformations that occur just by integrating healthy foods, like starting simple and starting different, eating these new wholesome foods, and all of a sudden your palate really shifts. I've seen thousands of people shift their palate to have new favorite foods. So I also really like to make the distinction to everyone that you are not broken. It's the food that makes you want the food. Those hyper palatable foods that we are quote unquote addicted to, they make you want more. The more you have it, the more you want it. One dose I've seen countless times. One dose of one of those hyper palatable foods will last a week. You'll get cravings and you'll have an increase in appetite from one serving. So the idea is to change your palate, to find the new foods you like, and to kind of like get your palate shifted down, like down regulated, so that you could taste the sugariness of a sweet potato and the saltiness of celery, and like it's all done by changing your palate and changing the different foods. And to let go of the idea that there's anything wrong with you because you want those foods. Those foods make you want them. So the more you can stay away from them, the better you'll be. And the more you'll enjoy the healthy vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, mushrooms, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices that I want people to enjoy in infinite tasty combinations. But it's just a matter of like going through this threshold. But every time people are like, I will never eat that again. Well, you have one hit of it and you're like, oh yeah, I remember how good it is. And your brain lights up. It is a
Right.
real biochemical cascade that takes place. You explode with dopamine when you eat something really hyper palatable, and it changes your whole chemistry. It's that powerful. So it's not you that's something's wrong with you, or it has nothing to do with any of your like, any kind of anything. We're socialized to love those foods. They taste amazing. They light up your brain. Of course you want those foods. So the less you have them, the easier that transition is. So I work with people to make sure they know, like, first of all, find the foods you love, have to love your foods, and then be very strategic about when you have those hyper palatable foods. Because if I told someone, or someone told me, you can never have another chocolate chip cookie, I can't live with that. Forget that. I'd rather just have all the chocolate chip cookies, or I would never want to change anything. So I tell people, just not right now. We kind of make it very strategic. And you're finding new foods you love. And then I call something called the days of deliciousness. So I don't like to call it a cheat day, because who are you cheating on? It's your own self, and you want to like love yourself, right? Choose yourself, choose you now. And so a day of deliciousness means let's say Thanksgiving, I love to have my Aunt Mary's pumpkin pie. We do it all together. It's very special to me. So you plan on Thanksgiving, you're going to have that pumpkin pie, whatever else you have at that meal. It's your day of deliciousness. And you go in it with intention. And if you go there with intention to enjoy every bite, savor every single morsel of it, knowing that for a week after, you're going to be craving pumpkin pie and you're going to have a bigger appetite per se, but it was worth it because you are not feeling guilt or shame or regret or anything, because you're enjoying it, and knowing you're going to get right back on plan at the next meal, no harm, no foul. And it's nice to know you could build these days in and still have an overall healthy 99% of your diet, 90% of your diet. If 90% of your diet is wholesome and healthy and not stimulating the dopamine releases like that, you could absolutely get away with having it. The other thing I make people notice or recognize is when you have a day of deliciousness like that, you will not feel the same afterwards. It's just like if you've been used to eating super healthy all the time, you feel so good. And I make people really like sit there and feel it. And how good does your GI tract feel? How's your energy? How's your sleep? How's your everything? And we really kind of marinate, because that which you focus on expands. So I have them really focus on how great it feels when they've got some momentum going, really eating super healthy and having this wonderful plan in action. And then, okay, here's your day of deliciousness. Now really sit and note how you feel. And everyone's like, I didn't sleep well. My stomach was killing me, blah, 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 blah. But they enjoyed it at the time, and then they remember why they like to stay on a plan. So it's positive reinforcement, and it's just practicing. So the goal is find your new favorite foods that are health promoting and wholesome, and leave these hyperpalatable foods for a day of deliciousness, being cognizant of what it's going to do to your brain and body, so that you can be prepared for it. Because, knowledge is power. Once you know how your body responds to things and know how to recover from it, that's everything you need to know. And then you get to choose from there.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
So
go ahead.
yeah. So like what we do is we like we have cooking classes here at our clinic, and then we go shopping with our patients. But it's transitioning them to, because I think the misperception that Julieanna and I will get from our clients is that because they're like, oh, hey, you got to talk about plant-based diets, is that they think that we're just eating kale and quinoa or three-bean salad every day or whatever. And, one of my big pushes, which I've been, saying for the last couple of years is, as you can see behind me, is like, we're missing the spices, we're missing the flavors, we're missing in plant-based cooking, because the general person does not know how to cook. So when they kind of went plant-based, they took out the meat that was, the main, and there was sides that was plant, vegetables, and grains and legumes, and they just didn't know how to take the rest of that plate and fill it up, right? And so most people are not eating enough plant-based foods, and so they don't feel full, and then they feel like, oh, I felt better when I was eating the meat, or etc. So it is something that we want to start incorporating these spices, because when you start including spices, then you get into the healing medicinal powers of foods. And also the flavors. So like, people ask me like, what are you having tonight? I'm having vegan tacos. That's what I'm having. What I had yesterday, I had pad thai yesterday. I'm having spaghetti and meatballs. It's all plant-based. right? But it's not just a salad, salad, salad. And I think that's the biggest misperception that most people come in and say, hey, and so meeting those people where they're at and finding. So if I have someone from Louisiana or someone from Chicago or someone from New York or LA or someone from France, I have to find like what are they eating and then just make it healthier. And that's the easiest transition. I think a lot of people feel like they have to change their whole diet, change their whole taste, and they'll actually appreciate those foods even better. Like Julieanna said, like you can actually taste the real richness of the foods. And so that's one thing that's really important, is to bring back spices and also have the patients learn how to eat and incorporate foods that are familiar to them rather than something that seems to be completely foreign.